Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pleasanton Unified School District Board of Trustees meeting of April 1st, 2021. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So tonight is a little bit different than some of our regular meetings. It is a special board meeting, so there is no public comment for items not on our agenda. However, there is, of course, still opportunities for the public to address the board on items that are on our agenda. As it has been our practice, you will, if you're making public comment, you'll be in the waiting room, so you should be watching the program on TV 30 or on TV at TV 28. When you're speaking, there'll be a public comment graphic that's displayed as we are using audio only. All right, so tonight we have with us Dr. David Haglund, the superintendent to my right. The vice president of the board, Mark Miller, is absent this evening. And we have trustee Steve Maher, trustee Kelly McCaughey, trustee Mary Jo Carrion. And with us in the room are cabinet, Dr. Janelle Woodward, the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Mr. Ed Dialazzo, the Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, Mr. Julio Hernandez, the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, and Mr. Ahmed Sheikh Al-Islami, the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, and Mr. Patrick Gannon, who is our Coordinator of Communication and Community Engagement. We do not have a student board member with us this evening either. We have a short agenda. I don't think there's any need to make any changes, but if I could have a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
I'm sorry, say that again. Who made the motion, Kelly?
I'll make the motion.
All right, thank you.
I'll second.
And Mary Jo second, moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
McCaughey?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. All right, so we're going to move right into report and discussion and possible action this evening. The first item on our agenda is our discussion about returning to a 4-day week for some in-person learning. So, Dr. Haglund, do you have comments before Dr. Woodward takes over?
Just briefly, as everyone is aware, the state adopted the CDE guidance for 3-foot distance. This plan was facilitated largely because of the opportunity that provided for us, also the shifting to the orange tier, which occurred yesterday. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Janelle Woodward, who's going to lead us in the conversation tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, President Larson, trustees, Superintendent Haglund, Pleasanton community, and members of the board. So this evening, before the board, we're bringing to you a proposed plan to transition from 2 days to 4 days for our current hybrid learners at the secondary level. That includes middle and high school, and at the preschool level as spacing permits. So we're going to speak about the proposed plan for our preschool students to attend in-person instruction numbers allow, and we'll be showing you samples of those schedules, as well as a proposed plan for middle and high school students to attend in person 4 days a week instead of the 2 days a week, according to their current bell schedule. So for background, our original plans were designed to increase in-person time on campus while also supporting our remote learners. So our plans were intentional because we expected to be able to stretch back into expanded opportunities for our students as guidance allowed. On March 4th, our hybrid elementary students began the process of transitioning to in-person learning. Classes were adjusted in March in order to accommodate AM/PM sessions, and currently our hybrid learners at the elementary level attend school 4 days a week. In addition, hybrid elementary students, as I said, attend 4 days a week. And during the course of the week, they also receive time with specialists, science specialists, PE specialists, and music specialists. Much of this occurs during their remote or their asynchronous time. So the good news is that our guidance has now been updated to reflect 3-foot distancing. And so we can now look at expanding the opportunities for our preschool students and secondary students so that they can be in person 4 days a week while still supporting our remote learners at home. So I'm going to pass to Assistant Superintendent Dialaza, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the classroom space and physical distancing guidance.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward, and good evening, members of the board, President Larson, Superintendent Haglund, and community. So for context, we wanted to review the language that has been adopted by Alameda County, which came from the California Department of Public Health, which came from the CDC. And so the county has adopted this language. There are links in the presentation, so if anybody would need to go and find the information, they can definitely download this presentation and link into the documents. The language is there in the bulleted section of this slide, and I'll try not to read it, but it's pretty straightforward. So in terms of the 3-foot distancing, the county still does recommend that we maximize the seating as best possible. Distance, we should continue to do so. Distance between the teacher and students remains at 6 feet. So again, something to keep in mind that distancing for the students can now go to 3 feet, but for the teacher to the student distancing or teacher to teacher distancing, 6 feet is still what they're recommending. So the language is maintaining a minimum of 3 feet between student chairs is strongly recommended. We want to emphasize that. And internationally and nationally, we know that there is a range of 3 feet to 6 feet distancing. Schools are able to implement a shorter physical distancing policy, but if schools do that, then we really have to adhere to a higher mask requirement. There are other layers of mitigation that a school district or a school can implement, stable groups, ventilation, which we do here in Pleasanton, as all of you know. But definitely 6 feet is still recommended during times where masks may be off. So we think about eating time, drinking, that time of the day. Fully apply the state and county distancing requirement. Although you can see in the language there is some flexibility, but that flexibility means we have to adhere to a higher standard for the mitigation efforts. That's really, really important for us to remember. If there are certain situations, so we're going to go over the proposal here for the schedules, but if there are situations where there are more kids than a classroom can hold, then we are going to rely on our staff, our principals, to resolve that issue by determining what are some other ways we can move furniture. Is there a larger space? What is the situation in that classroom so that we can mitigate that issue so that we can accommodate all the students that need to be in that class as best possible. So we're going to lean on that flexibility, but with that flexibility, we're going to adhere to the higher standard. Slide and talk specifically about preschool. So if you recall, currently we have the 2-1-2 model for preschool. That means we had a group of students come on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday was their off day, and then another group of students came on Thursday, Friday. In this proposal, we are proposing that we combine both of those groups, so then all students who are in the hybrid model attend all 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And in the preschool program, there is a staggered time frame. So the first group would come from 8:30 to 11. So that's our general proposal for, we have 5 classrooms, by the way, at our preschool program over at Harvest Park Middle School. So it's located on the middle school grounds, but the preschool has 5 classrooms that would go into this 4-day model. Dr. Woodward?
Thank you, Mr. Dialazzo. So I'm going to walk us now through our middle school and high school schedules, and we'll be able to talk about what's the same and what's different. So, as I mentioned earlier, for context, our original schedules were designed so that we could expand these opportunities based upon current guidance. So what you're seeing right here is our current middle school schedule. And previously, our hybrid learners were in either A group, which was Monday and Tuesday, or B group, which was Thursday and Friday. Given the numbers of our hybrid learners, when we realized that the groups were smaller because we had so many students on remote learning, so we were able to use the 3-feet guidance and combine the students that would normally attend on Monday and Tuesday with those who would attend on Thursday and Friday, and bring the students together for 4 days of instruction, but continue to follow the schedule that we've been on all year. This preserves the integrity of the schedule for our remote learners as well. Our high school students. So the schedules might look a little bit different, but it's the same concept. We're taking the 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, and Thursday and Friday, and for our current hybrid learners, they're coming onto our campus for 4 days of instruction. But nothing is changing with the Bell schedule right now, because it's important to note that our teachers still need the time to do the planning in the afternoon, because they are also doing concurrent instruction, and this shift is not going to eliminate that. So the need for them to be able to have the time to meet remotely with their remote students and to be able to do the planning and the lesson planning, which is quite a lift, exists as well, even with this new proposal. And then on the third slide, you see that the same concept applies. This is for Village Alternative High School, and this shows what their schedule would be like. So I'd like to run very quickly through a little bit of the information that Mr. Dialazzo talked about in terms of the guidance and the numbers. We have a spreadsheet of all of the classes where we think we are pretty much at capacity, and we're going in and we're doing measuring and an analysis of the spacing there. And that provides our principals and our assistant principals, our vice principals, with the opportunity to engage in problem solving as to what other options might be. So I'd like to show you that this is an example of the team that was, let's go back to the guidelines, please. We had our Mehdi and his team, our facilities team, our maintenance, they went out. They've just been extraordinary supporting this initiative. And so they started measuring from the 3 feet from all directions, side to side, front to back, so that we could see how many desks we could fit into a classroom. And the guidance does say it's chair to chair, so that shifted a little bit as well. So on the next slide, you see that this was a typical classroom. This is from Pleasanton Middle School, and this classroom had 11 desks in it. With our current guidance, the classroom can now have 24 desks after the reconfiguration. Additional spacing could also, if we need more space, we can look at what other types of furniture might exist in the classroom or other kinds of creative spacing for the seats. And that could help us find a little bit more space. Then let's go along to a classroom at Amador. So currently, the classroom is holding 9 students. After configuration, it's determined that the classroom can now hold 28 students. So with these factors in mind, as well as the need to allow our students who have already been on the hybrid program to come back and have more time on our campuses now that the guidance has become reduced to 3 feet, our proposal is that we combine our current hybrid A and B groups for preschool and secondary students, expanding in-person instruction learning to 4 days a week, according to the current bell schedule for the remainder of the year, beginning on April the 19th. Are there any questions?
So I think we'll follow our regular process. We'll ask for board questions and opportunity for staff to address those. We'll seek public comment and then come back for additional questions or comments by the board members. So, questions? Steve?
Couple. When you looked at your data, Dr. Woodward, what was like the average class size of our hybrid students currently?
So, Mr. Maher, I didn't work out the actual average. What I did do is use 16 as a cut point, and then we looked at the 16 and above to determine spacing. I would say that would be comparatively a handful of classes compared to the majority of classes, which were probably between, when you combined, could have been between 12 to 20 on average potentially, but we do have some classes that are larger.
Is middle school larger than high school, do you think?
The middle school numbers do tend, at least on the spreadsheet, they do tend to be larger, although there are some classes at the high school level that are more impacted. We see that some of our freshman classes have, and our English classes, some of those classes have additional numbers at the high school level too.
Are you setting a cap, or is that the cap that you mentioned in your report?
So the cap is determined by the space in the classroom. So the guidance says 3 feet, and it does not have a number as to how many students can fit. So we have the ventilation, we have the mask wearing, we have the doors open, we have the distancing, we have the teacher 6 feet away. So in some classes that are smaller, it could be less students. In other classes that are larger, it could be more students. But in looking at the numbers, the PE classes and those classes that are outside, those will have larger numbers. That's manageable. So in looking at all of our classes, we can see that there is a range, and we can see where our potential pain points are, and so we can specifically problem solve that.
What if parents chose remote, and now because it's 4 days, they want hybrid? Do we have an answer for them?
We do. And the answer is that we're doing this for our current hybrid students right now. And the reason for that is that one class might have space, but students at the middle school and the high school level have multiple classes. And so we have to make decisions based upon the guidance, and the guidance limits the amount of students that can be in the class. And then for the stability of the program, we need to move forward from where we are today.
If a parent chooses to go to remote, can they do that?
Parents have been able to go to remote. What we want to avoid is the switching back and forth, because that's very disruptive
So they
to
can
the
go
learning
remote,
environment.
but not the other way.
If they needed to move to remote, they could move to remote at this point in time, and then that would, yes. But we hope that they stay with us in school.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward.
Other questions?
Well, just to expand on Trustee Maher's question, in terms of if one student has, is fine period 1, but period 2 seems to be impacted, that student will still have class. It just might be, as Ed had mentioned, that classroom might be in a different location to accommodate the larger attendance for that classroom. So in other words, we're not going to turn away a cap for any particular class because it's too full, are we?
So for the current hybrid students that that are coming to school 2 days a week and come 4 days a week, we're not going to turn away students. We will engage in problem solving. That could include a number of different alternatives, but the student is absolutely still, we still want the student to attend. We will look at the guidance, so we may have to be creative in a few situations, but we will figure that out.
Okay, perfect. Then I do have a question about the preschool hybrid schedule. Just a clarifying question, what is the student cap for those classes? Just so I have a framework, a maximum for the preschool classes. Is it 24 students in those classes, or I'm just curious?
So those are our special day classes with some general ed students in the IPALS program. So Trustee McCoshey, there is no cap
Okay.
per se, but we want to make sure that we can accommodate the students based on the space. So the space in those classrooms, they are smaller classrooms than our typical classrooms. Some are 500 square feet. I think there's a couple that are 300 square feet. So they're smaller. Of course, the children are smaller, but and there are fewer children than 24, definitely, in each one of those classes.
So just a clarifying question, looking at the schedule, just so I'm understanding it right, there would be, you mentioned a staggered schedule. So does that mean that there's one set of hybrid students for the morning? So the preschool students are only going from 8:30 to 11:30, and then there's another group of students in the afternoon? Am I reading that schedule correctly?
So the students will be grouped together. It's just if there are, let's say, 10 students in a classroom, potentially half of them could come from that 8:30 to 11:30. The other half would come to 9 to 12 o'clock. But it's the same group of students.
So they're all getting the same amount of time, but because of ease of transition in and out, and with the distancing, that strategy's in place.
Okay, so just to clarify, it is from 8:30, are the preschool students going from 8:30 to 11:30, and then those students go home, or are they coming back after lunch, and there's another group of students in the afternoon? I'm trying to clarify, make sure I'm understanding, looking at the schedule correctly.
No, they're going home. So after that time for each one of those groups, they will be off campus.
Okay. Okay, that was just the question I had about the scheduling. And what has been the tempo from the parents for the preschool, changing from the 2-1-2 model to the 4-day model? Are the parents overall really super excited for that for their children? Do we have any input or feedback from the parents?
So I could tell you from the staff that I spoke to from the preschool, there have been questions from parents about when their students can go to a 4-day program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are all my questions for right now. Thank you.
Trustee Carrion?
Hi. First of all, I want to say this kind of reminds me of a Friends analogy when Ross is trying to bring his couch up and pivot. And so I just want to, first of all, acknowledge everyone for having to change on the dime, especially our teachers. I know how hard it is for you to plan something and then have to readjust. So I just want to say thank you. And I don't know if there's anything we can do to help support them in this going from 6 feet to 3 feet. That's just one question. And then my other concern is I'm really concerned about the preschool because Dr. Dialazzo was talking about a higher mask requirement. But in preschool, they're not able to wear masks because they're special needs. And the teachers wrote a letter saying that they did not want one. So I'm concerned about that, and I wanted us to maybe have a discussion about the preschool.
So I had a question about that, just in general. What is the rationale for including the preschool program and not including elementary school in the shift to 4 days?
Elementary students are already on the campus for 4 days a week. If they're hybrid learners, they come either in the morning for 4 days, in the afternoon for 4 days. The thing that's different is that for our elementary schools, we have a high number of students on remote only in the afternoon.
If I could jump in and clarify, the preschool started on a 2-1-2 model, like the secondary schools did. Elementary started on the AM/PM model. So they already had 4 days, whereas the preschools only had 2.
Okay.
So that's why the 2-1-2 models are shifting to a 4-day program.
Okay, so it's really more about the alignment of the models, if you will.
Correct, making sure every student has the opportunity to be on campus for 4 days.
And the fact that the preschool is special needs, does this also impact the decision to make sure that we're providing the services to the students that we have commitments for special needs?
I would say so, Trustee Larson. As Dr. Haglund said, it's getting the kids in front of their teachers more days, more time as much as possible. I think that's no secret. That's been our goal from the start. So this is one way to align all of our students to be on campus for the 4 days.
Okay. And so can you address the issue about the students not wearing masks? Because the campuses that I've visited, the students are wearing masks.
Yeah, there is an opportunity for some parents who feel that their child should be exempt from the mask wearing. That's true for pre-K-12. There is that opportunity if need be, and the language in the guidance has been if a student or staff member, developmental needs, physical needs, whatever, medical needs they may have, there is an exemption possibility for the mask. For preschoolers, from my understanding, and Dr. Woodward's been in the classrooms too, I believe the students are mostly able to wear the mask. If I may be mistaken, so if there are some students who are unable to, I know our push is to continue to educate, to reinforce, to help the students manage that behavior of if they are taking off the mask, if it's a sensory issue. Again, our job is to, try to keep educating and trying to kind of resolve that issue behaviorally as best as we can with the staff that we have. So, but yeah, it is possibly an issue with some of our kids. I wouldn't say it's primarily with preschoolers. I mean, I think there's a possibility that any student can have an issue with masks if there are cognitive, developmental, issues that student may have. So,
But it's a process. They're not allowed to just not wear their masks. I mean, that's we have the ability to say, you need to be wearing your mask, unless they have applied for the exemption to wearing a mask. Is that correct?
that is correct. Again, educate, reinforce, as best as we can with all of our students.
But very difficult for the little ones to remember. I mean, some of them are 3 years old, correct?
Yes, it's a 3 to 5 year old
What's the
program.
staff ratio of the preschool, do you know? I know they have 4 or 5 teachers, but they have aides.
Yeah, I actually have the numbers here. So one of our classrooms, it's 10 students to 4 adults, 8 students to 3 adults, 6 students to 3 adults, 7 students to 3 adults, 9 students to 3 adults. So
Is that combined?
there are 5 classrooms, so the numbers I gave you are for each classroom.
So that's the total enrollment.
That's correct.
So it'd be 10 in one classroom, is that what you mean?
10 students, 4 adults, 8 students, 3 adults, and so forth.
I'm just throwing this out here. Would it be easier to extend their day an hour if we wanted to give them more time as opposed to bringing them all together?
Go ahead.
I would say that it could be done. One of our goals at this point in the year is to minimize the disruption to schedules. Many of our families have become familiar with these routines, and they seem to be working well for our students. The other piece is, Dr. Vandekap, if you could please go back to the preschool side. As we go back to slide 5, you'll see that in the afternoon, we also have time set aside for our lesson development, and there's special education, case management, individual check-ins with our remote learners at that time. So if we were to extend the learning time for our hybrid students, then by default, we could impact the learning time for our remote learners in the afternoons.
I'm just really concerned because we have this letter from all of the staff of the preschool team asking for this not to be done. And I feel really uncomfortable with them saying, right here, they said, please note, most of our students are not able to wear masks because they have special needs. They are exempt. So I'm feeling uncomfortable with this.
Do you have other questions? Do you want to take public comment and come back to comments?
Ed, maybe give us those numbers again one more time, please, if you would.
Sure. So room 1 is 10 students, 4 adults. Room 2, 8 students, 3 adults.
I'm sorry, how many?
8 students, 3 adults. Room 3, 6 students, 3 adults. Room 4, 7 students, 3 adults. Room 5, 9 students, 3 adults.
So just to understand this, Ed, so that means that right now, that for room 1, there's only 5 students because they're split for 2 days, potentially, because you didn't mention remote students.
Right. So in the 2-1-2 model, they potentially are, yes, split. So we can, I don't know the exact numbers, Trustee McCoskey, but yeah, 5 and 5. I don't have that. I can get that breakdown. I could double check, but yes, some of them could be remote. Let me double check that.
Well, the numbers are really small, so I think maybe the bigger question is, what's the concern about combining them? Is it a management issue of working with the students with the COVID, the distancing requirements? And I'm not saying you have to answer it. It's just something to think about if that seems to be the greater concern, because the numbers are still relatively small. I'm good for public comment if we want to table it.
Yeah, if you could actually, Mr. D'Alazzo, if you're looking for those numbers, that would be just to get a general idea of in the 500 square foot room and the 350 square foot room, what is the size of the combined classroom that would be there in person? So I know we have a couple of people for public comment. Let's go ahead and, Mr. Gannon, and open it up.
All right. So for public comment this evening, we will start with Laura Bolin, and then Devansh Pandey, and then Michelle Verkylen. So Laura, if you are with us, go ahead.
I'm here. Good evening. I have the profound privilege to teach 6th grade block at Harvest Park. My first priority as a teacher is to ensure my classroom is safe, emotionally, socially, and physically. I cannot do that if you decide this evening to join our cohorts for the following reasons. Keeping students 3 feet apart, in their same seat for 3 hours will be extremely difficult. There will be 22 students in both of my 3-period block classes. There is a false perception in the community that class sizes will remain small. Many classes at Harvest Park will be well over 18 and some will be over 25. Next, I want to cite Dr. Kim Pryther of the University of California, San Diego, who is working with San Diego Unified to plan for its reopening. She's encouraging students to maintain 6 feet of distance. Dr. Pryther says if you tell kids 3 feet, it becomes 1 foot. And what worked for schools in the fall will only get harder with the present variant. Looking closer at Dr. Pryther's last point, the new CDC guidelines for schools released just 2 weeks ago are based on what is now old science. The studies were completed last fall before the B117 variant appeared. To date, there have been no school studies that take into account B117, which is 50% more contagious, more resistant to the vaccine, and is taking hold across California. At present, POSD COVID cases have been low. When a new, more dangerous variant is in the air, it is not the time to change course. In conclusion, I am asking you to vote no on combining our 2 cohorts. Please, for the sake of our students' health and safety, focus on the fall and take pride in all we have accomplished together during an unprecedented year. Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Devansh Pandey, followed by Michelle Verkylen, and then finally Laura Hall.
Good evening. I would like to cite a study by the New York Times asking 175 pediatric disease experts if it is safe enough to open school. Overwhelmingly, they said yes. And overwhelmingly, they said that 3 feet is a reasonable distance for students to be apart. While the previous commenter is right on some counts, it is not true that if you tell students 3 feet, they will be 1 foot away from each other. 3 feet is a perfectly acceptable distance, and in fact, the average distance, social distance in the United States, even in normal times. Let's be very clear about this. School reopening is incredibly important, and as someone who is going back to school right now, 2 days a week is unfortunately good, but not enough. Going back to school 4 days a week, for example, in science, would allow us to do significantly more labs and have more hands-on lab time. In mathematics, it would allow us to work better with our groups without having to deal with a lot of the echo problems that happen when half of your group is in person and half is online. In English and global studies, it facilitates better in-class discussions. In essentially every subject, having more in-person time in the classroom helps students. So we cannot wait until more and more time elapses before following CDC guidance and guidance from pediatric disease specialists who understand how the coronavirus works to an extent in classrooms. We must instead look forward, and we must instead reopen our schools the most we can safely, which is combining our 2 cohorts. Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Michelle Verkylen and then Laura Hall.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, President Larson, members of the board, Dr. Hagelin, members of the cabinet, and our community. I am Michelle Verkylen, president of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. The past year has been a perpetual state of trauma and stress experienced not only by each of us individually, but vicariously through the students we support. Prolonged exposure to stress and trauma affects brain cortisol levels and mental health. This in turn negatively impacts learning and retention. No efforts being made to alleviate things on anyone's plates only contributes to the continued trauma. We are the best because we have the best educators, but even the best have a breaking point. If not righted soon, I fear for the future of our district. The fact that our educators are still standing is a testament to their dedication. Child psychiatrist Dr. Norhalina Bahar said, "Children don't feel safe when there isn't a consistent routine. One moment it's physical classes, the next moment it's online classes. When there's an insecure situation, the brain will produce a response that makes it difficult for children to learn and study, and this could make them unproductive," she said. We know children thrive with their routines when they are consistent and predictable. We respect and acknowledge that some changes have been unavoidable this year. Others are completely within the control of our leaders. I know this board and our management wants what's best for students just like we do. But I wonder, with this latest rush to change things yet again, with having been back in person for just a couple of weeks and with only 36 days left in the school year, if all the proper questions have been asked and all the unintended consequences considered for this latest proposal. There are student and family schedules. There are health concerns. Perhaps not everyone wants their children only 3 feet apart. Have we asked? Have we taken into consideration that our 16-year-olds will not be eligible for the vaccine until mid-April, which likely means most will not be vaccinated or fully vaccinated until the end of this school year? Have we considered that our younger students don't have any opportunity on the short horizon? Have those risks been measured? Have you closely looked at the limitations of the one study being cited in moving to 3 feet? Have you looked at the trends occurring across the country within the virus and taken into account that spring break and travel is upon us? Have the conversations with families, students, and teachers occurred for leadership to know that this most recent proposal is indeed in student educational favor? Another change, another loss of predictability, more angst on some's behalf because of lack of distancing. We talked for months about the layers of mitigation, and yet we
Ms.
continue to
Verkylen,
strip
can you
these
please
layers
wrap
back,
up your set?
while our CDC director expresses fear for what's to come. Let me be clear with my words and representation this evening. In looking toward the 21-22 school year, our educators want nothing more than to be back in person with their students full time. Making another shift now only causes further delay and instability for all. Please support our students, our families, our employees, because Pleasanton students deserve the best. Thank you.
Finally, we have Laura Hall.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Great. I'd like to thank the district and board for holding this special meeting tonight. I would strongly encourage you to vote yes on going to a 4-day a week for secondary students. Schools are not super spreaders, and this needs to be done to show teachers and community that schools can reopen safely. Going forward, I just have a few questions I'd like you to think about, since I know you can't answer me directly right now. But these are questions that I've had that I feel I haven't been able to find answers to. Why can't secondary go full day to all periods? 2 hours of instruction a week for one subject is hardly what I call an education. You say the elementary kids are already going 4 days a week. They only go for 2 hours and 45 minutes a day. Why can't they go longer? Why can't they go full day? If desks can only be are only 3 feet apart, why can't they get an hour in longer? And please don't give the excuse of a schedule disruption. We've had disruptions this whole pandemic. We are used to them by this point. And finally, why can't we open our schools fully like San Ramon? Their students are in person 4 days a week for 5 to 6 hours, depending on the grade. Why wasn't our original plan back in July set up for a full reopen when we actually could do it? Finally, as you plan and prepare for the fall schedule, I'd ask you to keep communication open between parents and board members and district staff. I haven't felt like the board is doing their part to communicate with us, the community, specifically parents, on what is going on with the planning. Most of the board members don't have students in the classrooms here in Pleasanton. I don't always think that you know firsthand what we are having or what experiences we are having as parents in the classroom. The district will paint a pretty picture of success, and for the most part it's true. But this has been a hard experience for everyone, and I want to feel heard and listened to. And I haven't felt that recently from the board members. Please engage with parents more, please ask us for input, and please listen to our requests. We are the ones on the battlefields with our students. We are the ones who voted for you to be our voice. Please be our voice for the students. Thank you.
Mr. Gannon, that's all? All right. Thank you for the speakers who spoke this evening. More questions or comments from the board about the plans?
Ed, you were going to get us some data on the preschool?
Yes, Trustee Maher. So the numbers I gave you totaled 40 students, and those were all hybrid based on the chart from our staff.
40, you said?
40, correct. And so I have 7 students who are remote. Now, I say a little bit of a caveat with the numbers. They shift. I mean, these are just snapshots. I just want to be open about that and transparent, that they're testing students qualify and so forth. But the snapshot I got from the site administrator is what I gave you.
So the classroom that had 10, is some of those hybrid or remote students in that classroom, so that class is lower, or?
No, the 10 students in room 1 are all going to be there. They're all hybrid. 10 students hybrid in that class. Room 2, 8 students hybrid. They're in the class. Room 3, 6 students. Room 4, 7. Room 5, 9.
Okay. So those numbers didn't count the remote ones then?
No, those were the numbers provided to me. Those were students that we anticipate to come back into the classrooms.
Okay, so it's not double. So it's not, we're combining and now we're going to have 20. It's that the combined number is 10.
Correct. The total number is 10 total students. Correct.
So for classroom 1, they currently have 5 students for 2 days. And then the other days, they have the other 5 currently. And
Yeah.
then we're going to combine it to 10.
I'm going to, I don't know the exact breakdown,
an
but
example.
let's just say yes. So the total is 10. Currently, it's 5 and 5. Sure. I don't know that for sure, but we can,
Just as an
guess.
example. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's correct.
And for the public's benefit, I mean, just the conversation, those numbers sound small, but these are students with special needs, and they're preschoolers, and there are different challenges than, you might see in a regular classroom.
Ed, how many of these students are students that have communication disorders, would you say? Most, besides other issues?
I would say in my experience, preschool students are in a special day class, special ed program because of communication issues. Yeah, I would say.
So they're going to have a very difficult time keeping their masks on. I mean, they need.
Yeah.
But I always stated they're exempt. Wasn't that mentioned earlier, that most of these students are exempt from wearing the mask in general?
They're exempt if their parents provide information about their exemption. So typically those come with a doctor's note. That's what we've asked for all of our staff, or I'm sorry, all of our parents and students. That's K-12, pre-K-12, Trustee McCaughey. In terms of the exemption possibility, it's not just preschool, I guess is my point.
What's the maximum size, Ed, that we have in a normal situation prior to the pandemic?
Maximum size of classrooms?
Yeah, of students in the class.
I mean, it's about there. I think it's 10 to 12, give or take. Some less than that in some years in some classes. Also depending on the class. That room 1 class is our moderate severe classroom, so we have students there who have more significant disabilities. I want to say I think there's a couple of students are non-ambulatory, so they're a wheelchair, student in a wheelchair, I believe. The other classrooms are mild to severe, so it's a range of students in those other classrooms. And a couple of the other classrooms are mixed also with general education students to get our mainstreaming, our inclusion goals. So we have some students in general.
Is there a possibility of getting more staff for them to help them with masking and keeping kids distance and so forth? Or would that just add more to the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer it and say, sure, we can definitely think about adding more staff to, again, reinforce the mask wearing, but that just adds more people into an already small classroom.
How much smaller are these classrooms than the normal classroom?
Yeah, I actually have the square footage here, and I'll ask Mr. Sheikh Islami about the regular classroom. So room 1 is 320 square feet, room 2 is 320 square feet, room 3 is 441 square foot, 525 for room 4, and then 500 for room 5. So it varies a little bit, but I would say, Mr. Sheikh Islami, these are significantly smaller than our regular classrooms.
Yeah, typical classroom standard today is 960. Some of our classrooms are slightly under that, in the 800 range. Some of them are slightly over, but a typical classroom that you see is 960 square feet.
So this is really just a comment. These children that we're talking about are really, really young. And, they're 3 to 4 years old, correct, Ed, in general?
3 to 5, yes.
3 to 5. Yeah. And so, their lives have already been impacted. And just in my mind, thinking how to double their time with their teachers for that need of engagement, it really is powerful. For me, which makes the 4-1 model very, very attractive. But some of the concerns that we're talking about here, about the masking, social distancing, I think we just need to consider whether it's support structures for the teachers or working with the students. I think that to double that time for these students who are in CDC classes is very, very empowering. But that said, that we need to provide a safe environment and support for the teachers to help make that instruction meaningful.
So I have a suggestion. I think I'm sensing, why don't we split the recommendation and we'll take them individually. And then we can have continued discussion. So if there was a motion for the recommendation to extend secondary school to the, returning to the 4-day week. We could take that separately.
Perfect. I was thinking the same thing, President Larson. I'll make a motion to approve the consideration for the 4-1 model for secondary.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion on this item?
Just one question. I heard that if classrooms are large, that they're going to meet with the principal and work out solutions for possibly the MP room. All right. If the classrooms are large, number of students, then the administrator will work with that teacher
Absolutely. That responsibility is not the teacher's responsibility.
by Monday?
I'm sorry?
They've already started working with them, I hope?
I think so. They're looking at the logistics right now, but in those situations, they would, it's the administrators would be the ones communicating that with the family and working with the teacher to come up with the additional options. It's not the teacher's responsibility to notify the families.
But to be clear, Mr. Maher, this schedule changes on the 19th, not on Monday.
Oh, good, okay, good.
It's spring break.
A little more time.
Yeah. Other questions or comments?
I'll just make a comment. You know, have had some communication with some parents and with 3 children in the district. I know my children, my 7th grader is super ecstatic when I said this might be an option. You know, from the students' perspective, we've received a lot of positive feedback for this opportunity. That said, I know, as Trustee Carrion already mentioned, I wanted to just really say I know that it's very difficult for the teachers to be shifting and adjusting, and it'll be like another 3rd new day of school starting all over. So I know it's going to be a lot of work and preparation, but I really do think that this is a win-win for our students.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the recommendation for secondary move to 4 days per week as presented. I'll call the vote. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Oops, not 5-0, 4-0. All right, so now let's talk about preschool. I'm getting there. So we've talked about it several times already, but I can, I sense there's still some conversation to be had, but typically we'll start with a motion and we'll move from there.
Okay, well, I guess we'll start the conversation. I'll make a motion to consider the 4-1 model for preschool.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Again, seconding does not mean you agree. It means you want to have discussion on the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to accept staff's recommendation for the preschool program to return to 4 days per week as presented. So who'd like to address the motion? Would you like to address the motion? So I'll start. So, so yeah, for me, this is about these special needs kids. This is it's been one of the most challenging parts of this pandemic, to be in all honesty. We were given certain amounts of relief in law for certain activities all year long. Our services to our special education students was not one of those things that we were given relief on, and it's been a struggle to provide services and to make sure that those students get the appropriate amount of care and education that we're obligated to provide. And yes, the minutes requirements get met in a variety of different ways, but I think it's safe to say that we do believe that our teaching staff are the best providers of that education in person. And But I do understand that the challenges with preschool are a little bit different, and the fact that we have, just different logistical rooms, problems with rooms and things like that. We do have additional dollars that can be allocated through the COVID, a variety of different pots of money for learning loss mitigation and uses for these funds. And perhaps something can be done to help mitigate the mask wearing and, that with some additional supervision. But I would really like to see the students with their teachers the 4 days. That's how I'm feeling about it.
I think before I would vote yes for that, I would like to get the teachers that are involved with all those children there. And maybe you have done this already, Ed and Janelle, I don't know, but get them together and say, we want more time for these youngsters. How are we going to do that? And have them give you feedback. Maybe they need more time. Maybe they need to have the kids go longer, more help. I'm not sure what it is. Smaller desk. Maybe you've done that. I don't mean to imply that you haven't. But before I vote yes, I want to hear all that.
So, and I guess the reason why I made the motion is in general because of the opportunity of time of instruction with the students. I think that especially it would double the amount of time that they have with their teachers. But that said, I need clarification on what the core issue is from the teacher perspective. On what is it the concern of the masking and that there's a sense of unsafety, or is it really truly more of a management to their specific learning needs and the adaptations that they have to do in the classroom with their students? And so I just want to clarify that was the driver on making the motion initially, is to give them as much instruction time with their teachers. And I do appreciate what Trustee Maher is saying, is that maybe there's some flexibility on what that looks like, but that to me is what is the driving force, that they're 3 to 5 year olds. Their life has been impacted significantly for this last year with the pandemic. We don't want to when we want to help get them back to that loss mitigation of instruction time that they've suffered. So that's just a comment I wanted to share.
No, I'm just concerned because I feel like they're the experts, and they said that there was a meeting, and they thought they came to an agreement, and then after the agreement, it was something completely different than they talked about. So I'm just concerned about, these are the experts, and I just want to be able to trust the people who are actually working with them. So that's my only concern.
Dr. Woodward, can you just talk a little bit about the meeting that they did write to us and talk about?
Thank you. I will actually pass to Mr. Dialazzo, who was at the meeting.
So we had a meeting with the vice principal, who's in charge of preschool, the program specialist, and our director of elementary ed. So I did not meet with the teachers. So I don't know what meeting you're referring to, Trustee Carry On, but I did meet with that group that I just mentioned, and we talked about options. We talked about the groupings, the 4-day-a-week, heard the concerns about the 4-day-a-week, issues with scheduling. I think one thing I want to add is that our students with IEPs in preschool have some of them potentially could have several service providers, speech therapists and other providers that may be working with the students. So there is a scheduling issue, possibly switching their schedules at this point to a 4-day. So I know that was one big major issue that came up. But I did not attend a meeting with the teachers.
If I could add, HR did not attend a meeting either with the teachers, nor has this issue been raised by APT to HR. Again, I would caution, as I would caution the executive cabinet team, that that may be interpreted as direct dealing with the members that are represented by the union. Again, if there's an issue, I would expect that APT would raise that at the negotiations table. The members are eligible to ask for additional PPE or additional mitigation. That's already something that's in writing. But again, if it is an issue, we are meeting relatively soon in the negotiating table. We may be able to tackle it at that point, or we may be able to have a meeting with APT present if that's of interest to the association.
I'd like to make an amendment. I'd like to vote on a motion to make an amendment, which you'll take these in order. So we'll if my motion is seconded and then we'll vote to whether or not to approve it, and then we'll go back to take the other motion. So I would like to move that we provide some additional resources to help the specific challenges that are, involved with the 3-year-olds, with the 3 to 5-year-olds in at our preschool program throughout the remainder of this school year.
Do I need to second that?
Well, if someone wants to second it, yes, they need to second it.
I think that would be huge, and I think that would be really helpful for the teachers to help address some of their concerns, so I'll second that amendment.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to provide some additional resources to help our preschool program with the challenges that they're facing with these young students. Is there any discussion on this item? All right, I'll call for the vote.
Maybe just one question.
Sure.
When you talk about extra resources, such as?
Well, I'd really like to leave, as the person making the motion, I'd like to leave that up to staff. I don't want to be prescriptive about what those resources are, but for example, it could be staffing, it could be a variety of things, but really the nature, I feel the nature of these students, both in their age and their special needs, might warrant some additional accommodation from the district not accommodation, that's the wrong word, some additional assistance from the district to help the staff with these moving to this model.
So if I can just extend on what you're saying, the sense I'm getting is that the teachers are sensing a nervousness of, trying to make these accommodations and have to, help address with, the demands of, what these students will need and require to give them the support. And I think that giving them whatever the resources that they need to help with the transition, I think could be really, really helpful to help transition this, because it's going to be a big transition for them, with additional students in the classroom, and give them that grace of, that transition period. It's going to take some time to reform that sense of classroom with these students, because it's going to be the first time that they are going to be engaging with new classmates. So I think that just to help clarify, I think additional resources, whatever that may be, could really help with this transition, because it is going to be a big shift. And so I think it's important that we acknowledge that and give staff and the teachers the support for that transition.
Okay. I'll call for the vote. It's been moved and seconded to provide some additional, as I said, resources to the preschool program to assist in this transition. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. All right, so that motion passed. The vote on the transition itself is still on the table. So it has been moved and seconded to approve the preschool program moving to 4 days as presented. I'll call for the vote. Trustee Carrion?
No.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
No.
Okay. And I'm an aye. So that's a tie vote, so the motion fails. So we will remain with, as of right now, the preschool program will remain in the model that we are currently operating. We'll come back to you, the public, as conditions change again. I would like to say to the people who have emailed us, we do read all of your emails, but when we have hundreds and hundreds of emails on any given topic, sometimes there's not enough time to respond, but we do hear you and read them. As always, our response, the board has a response consistently that we're following the guidance, and as the guidance changes, we will change as well. So with that, our next regularly scheduled meeting, we have one more item. See, that's what I get when I don't print it properly. We do have one more item, I apologize. We are looking at sunshining our initial collective bargaining proposals for 21-22 with the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. This is item 3.2. Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, President Larson, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Haglund. Before the board is item 3.2, which is a sunshining for APT collective bargaining agreement. Under the provisions of the California State Collective Bargaining Act, each party prior to the beginning formal negotiations must present sunshine their proposals at a public meeting of the board. Both the Association of Pleasanton Teachers and the district are presenting reopener proposals in order to initiate formal negotiations for the 2021-2022 school year. I want to add that we are currently still negotiating the 2021 school year. Given that we have had negotiations about reopening, we have not been able to really tackle the collective bargaining agreement for this school year. So we are opening and simultaneously negotiating 2021, 21, 22 with the understanding that we are rolling over the same articles. So we're not adding any additional articles, obviously salary, which is included in benefits for APT, will stay open as well as the other articles. So the ask is that we already sunshined for 2021. We have not presented a settlement agreement yet, that we open 21-22 and we simultaneously negotiate both years, bringing a settled TA to the board that would include those 2 years, if that makes sense. If there's any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Questions?
Just a clarifying, so you said that it's the same exact thing, 2021 is the same as 21-22?
We're simply, Trustee Carrion, we are rolling over the same articles that we had sunshined in 2021, and we agreed to keep the same ones for 21-22 in the interest that we did not really negotiate the 2021, given the time that was invested in negotiating the number of MOUs. I think there's a total of 4.
All right, do I have a motion?
I motion to accept.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the sunshining proposal from the district and APT. And item 3.2, Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. All right, now. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is not until April 22nd, after we return from spring break. I hope people have an opportunity to spend some quality time with their families and enjoy the holiday. Thank you, everybody.